Hi, today we're looking at the excerpt from the Mahabharata called The Tale of Savitri. Begins page 91 in your literature book. And I think the way to read this story is, first of all, to approach it in terms of what problem does each character have. The story opens with Aswapati, who's called a Raja. Raja means king. It's related to the Latin word rex, the French roi, from which we get royal, regal, reign, etc. Aswapati is a good king. Valiant. He's brave. It's a good quality in a leader. He is wise. Boy, is that a good quality in a leader. Victorious over sense. Now, that's a Hindu concept. It means he is self-restrained. A worshiper. He's pious, liberal in giving. He's generous, prudent. Everybody loves him. But he's got one problem. He has no children. And he's getting old. And that's a real problem in Hinduism, because it's part of every Hindu's dharma. Remember that word from the previous module, to marry and have children. And he's married, but he and his wives never had any kids. And that's a problem. It's an even bigger problem because he's king. That creates a political problem for his kingdom. Who is going to be king when he dies, as inevitably he will? Last time I checked, the mortality rate for human beings was 100%. And for a king to die without an heir invites conflict. Neighboring kings will invade to try to take the territory over. Nobles within the kingdom will often start a civil war over who's going to be the next king. And that's going to cause all kinds of trouble for the people. And so he fasts. Each day he eats only one small meal. And he prays to the goddess Savitri, the goddess of true speech. Okay. And he does this for 16 years. Now think where you were in life 16 years ago. That's a long time. And finally, bottom page 92, Savitri appears to him and offers him, top of page 93, some boon. A boon is a reward, a gift, a blessing. And basically she's giving him whatever he wants. And of course, what he wants is a child. If thou art well content, grant me, I pray, fair babes, continuers of my royal line. This is the boon I choose, obeying law, dharma. For, say the holy seers, the first great law is that a man leave seed. And of course, Savitri, being divine, knows that's what he wants, and promises him a girl. And when the hour was good, India believes in astrology. Certain times are auspicious for certain things. The wise king lay with her that was his first and fairest wife. Now, that line tells you that he has multiple wives, right? But the first wife is the primary wife. The others are concubines. Now, that's a a concept that we don't have in our society. A concubine is not a side chick. Um, the some guys have a side chick hoping the wife doesn't find out. Um, the concubine is a wife, but it's wife second class. They are actually married. He has more than one wife. And she conceived a girl. A girl, my liege, better than many boys. Now, in India, in traditional societies in general, the preference would be for boys. After all, in a traditional society, when a couple marries, the bride goes and lives with her husband and his family. She becomes part of his family. We have some echoes of that in our marriage customs. One takes place in the wedding itself when the father of the bride gives her away to the groom. In an earlier day, when women were considered property, he was transferring ownership from himself to his new son-in-law. And in traditional societies, marriages are generally arranged. Essentially, Daddy has chosen his son-in-law. The second leftover is the custom of the wife changing her last name to that of her husband. That's a symbolic way of leaving the family she grew up in and becoming part of her husband's family. But Aswapati has been praying for a child for 16 years. He is not going to be picky. He will take what he can get. And as she grows up, he names her Savitri after the goddess. And so, just to confuse you, there are two characters in this story named Savitri: the goddess and the king's daughter. And as the daughter grows up, she is beautiful, drop dead gorgeous. Like to an image of dark gold she seemed, gleaming, with waist so fine and breasts so deep and limbs so rounded. And ironically, that creates her problem. Top of page 94. No one dared of all the noblest lords to ask for wife that miracle, with eyes purple and soft as lotus petals, that pure, perfect maid, whose face shed heavenly light where she did go. The guys are all too intimidated to approach her father to ask for her in marriage. There's no dating in traditional societies. Often a couple meets for the first time at their wedding. In fact, one of my longtime colleagues at Grambling, Dr. Jim Kim, who's from Korea, he and his wife met for the first time at their wedding. It was a marriage arranged by the families. And so that's a problem. In traditional societies, the obligation to get married is especially strong for girls. And so, she fasts. Asceticism, self-denial, is an important part of Hindu practice, and to some degree in many religions. To fast as a sign of seriousness to underscore your prayers is a common theme. And as she is doing that, her father looks at her, and middle page 94, he, beholding her come to her growth, and thus divinely fair, yet sued of none. She has no suitor, no one pursuing her to become her husband, was grieved at heart, and spake, Daughter, 'tis time we wed thee, but none comes asking thee. And so he has a solution. Therefore thou thyself some youth choose for thy lord, a virtuous prince. He is taking a very unusual step in India of telling her to go and choose a husband for herself. Whoso is dear to thee, he shall be dear to me. Whoever you love, I will love. When you go to get married, if you're lucky, you get a second set of parents, and I was lucky. For this is the rule. The rule is by the sages taught. Hear the commandment, noble maid. That sire, that father, who gives not his child in marriage is blamable. It's his job as a father to see that she gets married. Blamable that king who weddeth not. Part of a king's duty is to get married so that he can produce an heir. Blamable the son who, when his father dies, guards not his mother. Haste thee to choose. And so choose that I bear no guilt, dear child, before the all-seeing gods. Now, what that means is choose someone of our caste. He is from the highest level of the Kshatriya caste, the nobles, and the highest subgroup of that caste, the kings. And so he wants her to choose someone who is the son of a king. And so she sets out, and she travels until top of page 95. She comes back in, and the Rada, the king's advisor, wants to know why the king hasn't gotten her married when she comes in. And the king says, that's why I sent her out, to find a husband for herself. And she speaks. In Chalva there reigned a prince, lordly and just, Dumutsana named. Now Dumutsana is not the man she's chosen for her husband. It's his father. And he has not one problem but two. First of all, he is blind. And before his son was able to grow up, an enemy took advantage of his infirmity and usurped the kingdom. And with his queen and son, a banished man, he fled into the wood. And neath its shades, a life of holiness doth daily lead. So he is living as an exile in the woods. But please note, caste in India is not about money. You do not move up a caste by making a lot of money, and you do not move down in caste by losing it. Okay. He still holds the rank of king, even though he no longer possesses a kingdom. This Raja's son, born in the court, but bred midst forest peace, royal of blood and named Prince Satyavan, that's the Indian form of Stephen. To him my choice is given. she has chosen Dumutsina's son, Satyavan, as her husband. And Narad, the king's advisor, objects. Bad choice. And the king wants to know why it's a bad choice. What kind of a man is he? Obvious questions for a man to ask a potential son-in-law. When my wife and I were dating, I got to know her parents even before things got serious between us. And that was a real advantage when it came time to ask her parents' blessing. And Narada, man, there is nothing wrong with him in terms of his character. And Aswapati then says, well, okay, he's got lots of virtues. Tell me his faults if he has any. And Narada says, of course, that everybody has some fault. But the defect that he has, which he cannot fix, is that it's fated, middle of page 96, he is fated to die after 1 year. Count from today 1 year, and he perishes. Now that's a serious problem in India. Would be anywhere. And don't ask how Narada knows this. He is a prophet. He knows things that people don't ordinarily know. But the problem is this: in India, if a man is widowed, if the wife dies, the husband remarries. But if the husband dies, the wife does not. And it's not just that she doesn't remarry. She lives as an ascetic. There's no point in getting your hair done, because you would do that for your husband, to look nice for him. He's dead. You don't wear attractive clothing. You eat bland food. I mean, it is pretty miserable. In fact, the ultimate is a practice called sati, where a woman whose husband has died and his body is being cremated, remember that's how they dispose of dead bodies in India, will jump into the fire and burn herself to death because she cannot bear the thought of living without her husband. Now, it's never been the case that most Hindu widows do this. But it has always been the case that when one does, they put up a monument to her. It's kind of like they are regarded as heroes. This is what we should all strive to be like. At least all women. Well, Aswapati doesn't want his daughter to marry a guy who's going to die after 1 year and leave her a widow living this kind of sad life. And so he tells her, choose some other husband. But look at her response, bottom page 96. Once falls a heritage. Once you lose your inheritance, there's no getting it back. Once a maid yields her maidenhood. Okay. There is no getting back lost virginity. Once does the Father say, choose, I abide thy choice. These three things done, they're done forever. You can't take it back. Be my prince to live 1 year or many years. be he so great as Narada has said, or less than this. Once I've chosen him, and I do not choose twice. My heart resolved, my mouth has spoken it, my hand shall execute it. This is my mind. She is determined. She has made her choice, and there is no going back. For better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, etc. And so the king and Narada somewhat reluctantly agree. And Aswapati takes Savitri out into the woods to Demutsana. And middle of page 97, Aswapati looks at Prince Satyavan and says, "This is my daughter Savitri. Take her from me to be wife to thy son according to the law, for thou knowest the law." Notice what's happening. The marriage is being arranged by the fathers. Demutsana objects. "Forced from our throne, wood dwellers, hermits, keeping state no more, we follow right. And how would right be done if this most lovely lady we should house here in our woods, unfitting home for her?" I've lost my kingdom. We live here in the woods, in a lean-to. We don't have a pot to you-know-what in. And look at Aswapati's response, bottom page 97. Answered the Raja, "Grief and joy we know." We know both happiness and sadness in life. And what is real and what is seeming. Remember Hindu philosophy from the last module? She and I. We know that the things of this world are not truly real. What is really real is Brahman. Nor fits this fear with our unshaken minds. Deny thou not the prayer of him who bows in friendliness before thee. Put not by his wish who comes well-minded unto thee. Thy stateless state shows noble. The way you have handled the loss of your kingdom shows a nobility of character. And character matters more than wealth in reality. Thou and I are of one rank. Okay? We are the same caste. The fact that you've lost your kingdom doesn't change your status. That's the way the caste system works. Take then this maid of mine to be thy daughter, since she chooses me, thy Satyavan, for son. As I said earlier, when you go to get married, you're not just marrying the person, the individual. You are marrying into their family. Okay, you become part of each other's families. My wife and I called one another's parents mom and dad. From really starting while we were still engaged up until the time when they died. And Demutsana then says that it had been his wish to arrange this marriage and, in a sense, become kin to Aswapati. When my wife and I got married, our parents became friends with each other because of our decision to get married. But he said, top of page 98, that when he lost his kingdom, he gave up that hope because he felt like that marriage would no longer be attractive to Aswapati to give Savitri to Satyavan. But in fact, Aswapati accepts the loss of kingship. In fact, he never objected to that. He was concerned about this fate that Duryodhana and Satyavan do not know about, that Satyavan is doomed to die in a year. And so the two of them, page 98, are married. Then gathered in the forest all those priests, and with due rites the royal houses bound by nuptial tie. When the Raja saw his daughter as befits a princess wed, home he went and glad. Okay, he marries his daughter off. He's done his duty to get her married. He goes home and glad was Satyavan, winning that beauteous spouse with all gifts rich. In India, traditionally, even today, the bride's family pays a dowry to the groom's family. Now, ladies, think what this does to your self-esteem. You are so worthless that we have to pay somebody to take you. And she rejoiced to be the wife of him so chosen of her soul. But when her sire, her father, departed, she takes off all the gold and jewelry and the Indian brides wear all of the jewelry they get their hands on. And the wedding dress is not white, as is our custom, but brightly colored. But she takes all that off, and she puts on the robe of soft bark and yellow cloth that Hindu ascetics wear. See, she's fitting in now with her husband's family. They're living as ascetics in the forest, and so she does the same. And all hearts did she gain by gentle action, soft self-government, patience, and peace. The queen had joy of her for tender services and mindful cares. The blind king took delight to know her days so holy, her wise words so restrained. And with her lord, her husband, in sweet converse she lived, gracious and loving, beautiful and dear. But the days are passing, and she is keeping track. Bottom, page 98. When the day comes that Satyavan is doomed to die, as it's approaching, she undergoes the threefold fast. For 3 days and 3 nights, going without food, going without sleep. And her father-in-law says, this is too hard on you. And Savitri said, don't worry about me. I have made this vow, and I'm going to keep it. And he recognizes, you need to keep your promises, particularly promises you make to the gods. When the day comes, top of page 99, she gets up early, makes an offering, sings the morning prayers, comes to greet the king and queen, and she again refuses to eat until the sun goes down that day. Prince Satyavan is going out into the woods with an axe on his shoulder, obviously to cut firewood. And she wants to go with him. I cannot be apart from thee today. Why not today, quoth Satyavan. What's different about today? He has no clue about his fate. The wood is strange to thee, beloved, and its paths rough for thy tender feet. Now that shows how poor they are. She has no shoes. He probably doesn't either, but he's used to walking in the woods. She isn't. Besides, with fast, your soft limbs faint. You know, if you've been going without food for several days, you're weak. You're prone to passing out. She says, I'm not weak or weary. I can walk. I'm a big girl. And notice, very bottom, page 99, that they have to ask his parents' approval for her to go with him. In a traditional society, you never grow up in the sense of becoming independent of your parents. Page 100, his parents agree because this is the first thing she has ever asked for in the whole year that she's been living with them. And so they head out into the forest. Gathers some fruit into a basket, and then he chops wood with his axe, bottom of page 100. Presently there crept a pang upon him. A fierce throe burned through his brows. And all a sweat he came feebly to Savitri and moaned, "O wife, I'm suddenly too weak for work. My veins throb, my blood runs fire. It's as if a threefold fork were plunged into my brain." He's got a piercing headache. It sounds to me like heat stroke. "Let me lie down, I cannot stand up." And she runs to catch him and lie him down on the ground. That way, in case he does pass out, he won't hurt himself falling. And in front of her, page 101, appears Yama, the god of death. And she asks him, middle of page 101, why do you come in person? Usually Yama sends his messengers. And Yama replies that it's because Satyavan is such a good man that he comes himself. And so he goes to take Satyavan's soul, and Savitri follows him. And she warns her, you're going too far. It's an almost universal theme in mythology that if you enter the realm of the dead, you may not be able to come back. And she responds that she's going to go where he goes. And she sings to him, page 102. About duty, dharma, and virtue, and knowledge. And Yama is so moved that he offers her any boon, any gift, except the life of Satyavan. And notice what Savitri asked for with her first wish. It's not something for herself. It's not even for her family. It is for her father-in-law. And Yama grants the wish and resumes his journey to take Satyavan to the underworld, warning Savitri not to continue but she does, and she sings again about friendship and faithfulness. And again, Yama is so moved, top page 103, that he offers her any boon except the life of Satyavan. And again, her second wish is for her father-in-law to have back his kingdom. And Yama promises that it will happen. And again warns her not to follow him. And again she sings of tenderness, of compassion, of mercy. And again Yama is so moved that he says, accept the life of Satyavan, thy lord. Ask one boon yet again, and I'll give it. And her third wish is for her father, who has no sons, to continue his line. Remember, she's the only child and she's a daughter, so she's going to help Satyavan continue his line, not her father's line. And Yama grants it and again warns her not to continue, and again she does, and again she sings about righteousness and friendship. And again Yama is so moved that he offers her anything she wants except the life of Satyavan. And with her fourth wish, she wishes for sons born of my body, boys, Satyavan's children. Now this is not as crazy as it might sound at first sight. Does a woman necessarily know the moment she becomes pregnant? Isn't the first sign usually when something doesn't happen a couple of weeks later, when it normally would? So she in fact could be pregnant and not know it yet. And Yama grants that wish. This is, after all, a story about magic, right? And again she sings the longest of her songs about virtue, about love. And Yama is so moved. Top page 105. O thou great heart, perfect and firm, ask any boon from me. Ask an incomparable boon. Now, what did he forget to say this time? She's got him. Not heaven I crave, nor heavenly joys, nor bliss incomparable, hard to be granted even by thee, but him, my sweet Lord's life, without which I am dead. Give me that gift of gifts. I will not take anything less without him, not one boon, no praise, no splendors, no rewards. No, if you won't give me him, you can take everything back. I don't want it. I want him. Well, Yama is caught. And so he releases Satyavan. And when he wakes up, page 106, she tells him what happened, except she leaves out her part in the story. And they go back home. And presumably live happily ever after, enjoying all the blessings that Yama promised he would bestow. Now, what I'm going to ask you to think about, one of the things I'm going to ask you to think about in the discussion is, what is the point of this story? What is the lesson that it aims at teaching?